Okay,
Recording.
go ahead.
Hornets. Hornets in the vicinity of an infant or even an adult who has dangerous allergic reaction to a sting may be trapped if the hornets cannot be driven out of the room. Example, by opening window and spraying insect repellent at them, or insecticide in the general direction, but not directly on them. Similarly, mosquitoes or any other insects may be trapped where they pose a risk of malaria or other diseases. These dangerous creatures may be killed outright if necessary. However, where possible, they should be killed in an inconspicuous manner. Okay.
Don't start lefi tumoy.
Yeah,
Step on it instantly.
okay. I just want to write that.
Okay, and Raz, you actually
Yes.
skipped. We didn't hear you when you read C1.
Oh,
It's important.
where must I go back to C1?
Yeah.
When life threatening. Is that where I must go?
Yeah.
Any dangerous animal or insect that poses a threat to human life may and should certainly be exterminated by instructing a non-Jew to do so. If necessary,
Hold on a
one
minute.
may.
Hold on. Now, if there's time to get a goy to kill the animal, good. If there's an immediate threat, then a yid should do it. Okay, carry on if necessary.
Okay, just right. You have time to get away. If necessary, one may even kill or certainly trap such animals himself on Shabbos. The creature may be killed even if it is not presently pursuing any person, because its mere presence in the vicinity is a threat. Examples: a poisonous snake, mad or vicious dog, scorpion, raccoon, squirrel, etc., that may be rabid or otherwise dangerous. A black widow spider or brown recluse spider, but not other non-poisonous spiders. Oh,
Okay,
so how do
what's
you
the
know?
local variety? Anybody know the local variety? What's dangerous?
The black and the brown widow.
That
But
he's writing.
No others. Black and brown. Not here. I don't know others.
Nothing here. Okay. Hornets. Yeah, you read about hornets.
I read
That's
about
a
hornets.
Button spider.
Yeah. Jump to
Button
60.
spider. Yes. Button spider.
Button spider.
Yes.
They're
Celia,
prevalent.
you're able to-
They're prevalent in our area.
Mm.
Oh, really? Celia,
Brown-
can you put up a picture?
Brown widow. Yeah. I don't know what a button spider looks like. It looks like a button, I'm sure. A brown widow spider has a red hourglass, and a black widow spider has a red hourglass on the abdomen.
Uh-huh.
When likely to cause severe pain, not life-threatening. Animals or insects that do not pose a threat to life, but can cause significant physical pain and discomfort with their bite or sting, may not be killed outright if they are not presently pursuing anyone. However, they may be trapped, example, by covering them with a cup or bowl to keep them out of the way. If trapping is not feasible, they may even be killed. However, this may only be done in an inconspicuous manner, as shall be explained. Examples: snakes and scorpions of species that are clearly not life-threatening and where young children are not nearby. If there is an adult who suffers illness from hornet stings, but whose life is not threatened, the hornets are included in this category. Killing the animal.
Explain for a minute. Sorry. Let me just explain for a minute. Remember that any time that you kill something, not because you need it, but to avoid the unpleasant consequences of having it around, is the Melacha she'eino tzricha legufo. a melacha not for its own sake. In other words, the melacha of Shochait in the Mishkan was done because you wanted the animal. You wanted it for its hide, for example. So you wanted the animal which you were shechting. And therefore, it was not a makalkel. You weren't spoiling it. You were actually perfecting it for use by killing it, because you can only use the hide when it's dead. So although as far as the animal is concerned, you're makalkel, you're ruining it. But as far as the person doing the melacha is concerned, you're perfecting. And it's also tzricha legufa. You need the thing itself with which you are doing the melacha. However, killing an animal or a spider or whatever it is because you don't want it to sting is the melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, is the and I can't say non-necessary. It's necessary in order to avoid the sting, but it's not for the sake of the object with which you're doing the melacha, namely the spider. You don't need the spider. You want it out of the way. Melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, we generally rule, like Reb Shimon in the Mishnah, that it is not considered a melacha midoraisa on Shabbos. Now, being that here, in addition, there's the issue of pain or suffering or illness by the potential spider bite or sting or whatever. So, although normally a melacha she'eino tzricha leguf is forbidden midrabanon, but in this case, the Chachamim relaxed the prohibition for the sake of the potential victim. Okay, carry on, please. T3.
T3. Killing an animal in an inconspicuous manner, drosa lefi summa. One may only kill these animals in an inconspicuous manner, referred to dorso lefi, is that summa? Typically, if the summa, tumo. Typically, if the killing is to be accomplished by stamping upon the animal, example, a snake, scorpion, poisonous spider, then one must not openly stamp upon the animal in an obvious way. This will mislead unlearned observers into thinking that killing living creatures is permissible on Shabbos. In fact, this situation is exceptional due to the principle of Melacha she'eino tzricha legufa. See section 2. The correct procedure is to assume the appearance, of one who merely happens to be walking in the vicinity of the pest. In this manner of walking, one is permitted with full knowledge and purpose to tread upon the animal and kill it. However, it would seem that any inconspicuous manner of killing the pest, that is where the killing act is not obvious, would also be considered drosa lefi tumu. If the animal is pursuing him, one may kill the animal in insect outright. In all of these cases, it is obviously preferred, where possible, to call a non-Jew if doing so will not compromise safety. Regarding annoying but harmless insects, tzitzot. A swarm of insects in the house. One may not spray insecticide upon a swarm of ants or other insects in the house on Shabbos or Yom Tov, nor may one deliberately tread upon them, even if inconspicuously. This is because ants, even in swarms, with the possible exception of aggressive red ants found in Texas or Florida, thank goodness we don't live there, are neither dangerous nor are their bites very painful. Therefore, there is no basis to permit killing them on Shabbos. It is questionable whether sprinkling or spraying poison around the perimeter of the area, but not directly on the insects, to discourage them from spreading is permissible. However, If the insects are in the kitchen or other areas of the house where their presence is particularly revolting, spraying in this fashion is permitted. In any case, it is permitted to ask a non-Jew to do the spraying. Gypsy
Let me
moth
stop you for a minute.
Mhm.
If you want to stop ants from walking around, you can spread Vim. Vim is not poisonous to the ants, but very unpleasant to them, and they therefore won't walk there. So you're allowed to spread that around where the insects are.
Rabbi, baby powder also works.
Okay, Gesundheit, baby powder.
Baby powder stops ants from walking. Yeah. Gypsy moth or grasshopper infestation. In some areas, widespread insect infestation strikes every few years, causing swarms of insects to blanket the streets and sidewalks. At these times, it becomes difficult or impossible to avoid stepping on an insect while walking. In such situations, one should try to walk carefully to reduce the inevitability of stepping on insects. Even if treading upon insects is impossible to avoid, one may go outdoors if necessary. However, one must walk only with his destination in mind. That is, while treading on the insects incidentally and not deliberately aim his step on the insects. Oh.
Okay, this is not common, so we don't have to worry about it.
Causing bleeding or contusions. Causing bleeding, interestingly, the Melacha of Shochait is possible without killing a living creature. Inflicting a minor bleeding wound is also Shochait, even though the animal or person still remains very much alive. Examples: one may not deliberately prick his finger or remove a scab that has not fully healed, because in both of these cases, bleeding will quite surely result. One may not suck his bleeding gums. One may not suck his bleeding gums or any bleeding wound. Sucking and ingesting blood from bleeding gums, that is inside the mouth, is forbidden only on Shabbos and Yom Tov, whereas ingesting blood from a wound outside of the body is prohibited anytime. Even applying pressure, example, squeezing, to a wound is prohibited if this will extract blood. However, wiping the bleeding wound gently is permitted as long as one is careful not to apply pressure that will cause bleeding. So can you put on a plaster?
Yes, yes. We're going
Softly,
to,
but without
we'll talk about
pressure.
bandages.
Okay.
But
Avoiding
not
it.
yet. The problem with the plaster is not applying the plaster. The problem is taking off the sticky part in certain cases, which we've talked about in previous shiurim. And also the plasters often have writing on them, and the way to open the plasters by pulling a red string which tears through the writing. Those are the issues with plasters, but applying the plaster itself is not an issue.
So should one prepare plasters before Shabbos?
If one expects to be injured on Shabbos.
No, I mean have uncovered goodie plasters in the box.
Good idea. Yehudis, you're very wobbly. We don't hear you clearly.
Shame, she's breaking up.
You're breaking up, Yehudis. Yehudis, you're breaking up.
Cover
No good.
Ross.
No good.
So we just saying
Okay.
as Rabbi Wineberg says, you've got to pull them away from the back.
Oh gosh.
Very
I've
hard to
hardly
make
got
out what you're
internet,
saying, Yehudis.
sorry. Okay, I'll ask it.
Sylvia,
Can I suggest, Yehudis, that you type the question in the chat?
Okay, great idea. Carry on, Rab.
A1, avoiding activities that can cause bleeding. In general, one must avoid any activities that are likely to cause bleeding. Example, one should not brush his teeth with a dry brush on Shabbos or Yom Tov if the brushing is likely to cause his gums to bleed. Brushing with toothpaste is forbidden under Memareach, Memachek. Wet toothbrush should also not be used, see Dosh. Using a toothpick, sensitive skin.
Just a second. You know that today you can get toothbrush that there's no problem of ringing, there's schita, and you can get tooth wash where there's no issue of memareach. It's not a paste, it's a liquid. So you can use that on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But in any case, as far as the issue of bleeding gums is concerned, you have to know yourself. If you know from before Shabbos that whenever you brush, you are likely to bleed, then it's something like a sik reishe, and a permissible action with an inevitable forbidden consequence. So you're not allowed to brush because the consequence will be that you'll cause yourself to bleed. But the act of the brushing itself is not a problem. So if you know from during the week that you don't commonly bleed as a result of brushing, it's okay. Okay with dry.
Rabbi, are these toothbrushes and toothpastes? Is it a normal toothbrush and toothpaste, or is it a special Shabbos thing
No,
that you have
it's
to get?
made from non-absorbent fibers, which are more widely spaced together, because there are two kinds of shochait, squeezing out. One is the squeezing out liquid from fibers, and the other one is squeezing out liquid from between fibers. So as far as squeezing out from the fiber itself, you have a non-absorbent fiber in the toothbrush, then it's fine. And as far as squeezing out from between fibers, then they're spaced more widely apart so that when you press on the toothbrush, you are not wringing out from between the fibers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Using a toothpick, scratching sensitive skin. One may not use a toothpick on his teeth near the gums if that his gums are very sensitive and will bleed easily when scraped or irritated. Similarly, one must not scratch sensitive skin if he knows that this will probably cause bleeding. Pulling a loose tooth. One may not pull a loose tooth on Shabbos or Yom Tov because pulling the tooth will almost certainly cause bleeding. Powders and salves that draw blood. Any manner of causing blood to be drawn is prohibited under Shochait. Therefore, it is forbidden to apply a powder or a salve to draw blood from a wound. Why causing bleeding is the Melacha of Shochait? Blood is called the nefesh, soul. Causing a bleeding wound is prohibited because the Torah refers to blood as the nefesh, soul. In effect, the Torah regards the blood as a form of life itself. Therefore, drawing blood from the body of a living being is, to some degree, equivalent to taking a soul. That is part of the soul of that living being. Causing bleeding is the Melacha of Dosh, according to some poskim. According to some poskim, however, causing bleeding or a bruise is not related to Shochait. This view maintains that Shochait can only occur when the life of a creature is totally extinguished, not just partially. According to these poskim, causing bleeding is classified under the Melacha of Dosh because the blood becomes extracted, in a sense, from the blood vessels and capillaries. Blood tests on Shabbos. Drawing blood for a blood test on Shabbos is the Melacha de D'oraisa of Shochait, because the blood that is being extracted is needing for a constructive purpose, that is to measure the glucose levels, etc. One who requires a blood test, whether it will be administered at a clinic or at home, must schedule these tests for before or after Shabbos. If the blood test must be taken on Shabbos, and to postpone it could lead to pekuach nefesh, one is permitted to take the test even on Shabbos. One may even administer the test himself if a non-Jew is unavailable or unsuitable for the task. For example, a diabetic is permitted to test his blood sugar levels on Shabbos if he is medically required to take this test every day. If necessary, an electronic glucose monitor may be employed for this purpose. However, care should be taken so that only the minimum volume of blood required is drawn for each test. Note, as a rule, persons with chronic medical conditions should seek guidance from a qualified halachic authority on how to deal with their special requirements on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Can't read that.
Okay, this is not there in the older version, this whole paragraph that you just read.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important and common. So remember what it says. If you're able to get the electronic device to read the blood glucose, get it. If not, then minimize the amount of testing on Shabbos with a stick drawing blood, and take only as much blood as you absolutely have to in order for the stick to read the blood. Okay, interesting that he put this in the second edition.
It's, yeah, causing a bruise, chabura. Why causing a bruise is shochait. Inflicting a bruise upon a person or most animals is the shochait for the same reasons that causing bleeding is shochait. A bruise is caused by sudden impact, does not break the skin, but ruptures tiny blood vessels. The bruise develops when capillaries, the tiny blood vessels close to the surface of the skin, are broken and cause blood to seep just beneath the skin. The black and blue discoloration is eventually deoxygenated blood. Sorry?
Is actually deoxygenated blood.
Okay. Thus, a bruise is equivalent to a bleeding wound, except that a bleeding wound causes blood to emerge from above the surface of the skin, whereas a bruise remains beneath the skin. Therefore, one must be extremely careful never to strike another person or animal, even without any intention of causing harm. Example, when disciplining a child, one must be extremely careful not to cause a bruise. Note, one must not strike an unruly child too forcefully, even during the week. Causing a bruise is tzovea, according to some poskim. According to some poskim, causing a bruise is properly classified under the Melacha of tzovea, dying. Bruising is tzovea because the impact causes a discoloration in the skin. According to the Yerushalmi, the Melacha of tzovea was required in the Mishkan for coloring the hides of the elim, the rams. The animals' bodies were knocked with reeds and bruised to cause the skin to redden, refer to tzovea. The reddish hue that appeared on the skin was the dyeing effect required for its use in the Mishkan. The animal was then killed and its skin removed and tanned. The reddened ram's skins are referred to as, I can't read that, in the Torah.
Skin of rams ma'odomim made red.
Made red. In Torah, see also the Melacha of tzovea. Okay. Applying pressure.
So whatever the reason causing a wound is either Shochait or it is dosh, extracting blood, or it is tzoveya, coloring, discoloring the skin. Now, we're going to stop here, and I'll take questions which must have piled up over the month that we haven't learned. You've been awake nights waiting to ask your questions. Here's your big chance.
Rabbi, why such a cruel practice of battering the rams? Why not to die?
I don't know.
Isn't
I don't know. I'm thinking that
okay.
why not just dye the skin instead of making it red while it's alive? I don't
Because
see.
don't we go out of our way not to harm
do.
other creatures?
Oh,
We do. I
Balachai.
suppose if you could talk to the rams and tell them that their skins are going to be used as a covering for the Mishkan at the cost of a couple of clops, they would probably jump for the opportunity. But otherwise, I don't know why.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Apparently, you have so many questions piled up that you don't know which one to ask first. And that's why you're stuck.
Rabbi, it's not a Shabbos question. It's about in general, a treatment of animals, including insects. Some people are pretty casual about stamping on spiders and insects that could easily be removed and taken out of dangerous way. And I wonder what the halacha is around that. Do we have free reign to
halacha
kill
is like
any
this.
insects?
The halacha is that you're allowed to. There's a medrash that talks about killing a spider. And it says, I don't understand it, but it says that if you kill a spider, you get 7 mitzvahs.
Wow.
I don't know that mitzvahs are collectibles, and you can get 7 of them as a bonus for killing one spider. I don't know how that works. But in any case, this is the medrash that's quoted. And it's also said that David HaMelech asked the Eibishter, Ribono Shel Olam, why do you make these hideous creatures like spiders? What for? What benefit are they? So Hashem said to him, watch, you're going to see. You'll see that you need them. So what happened was that David HaMelech was pursued by Shaul all around the country. You remember?
In the cave.
Yeah, he was chased by Shaul, who thought he's a renegade and a rebel. Anybody was there last night at the Shir Tanya, we talked about this. And at one point, Shaul was camped, David was camped in a cave. And Shaul and his men were searching for him. They came to this particular cave, and David HaMelech was about to be found out. So in order to protect David, Hashem appointed a spider to make a web over the mouth of the cave. If you've ever been to Kruger and you've seen these sheets, big sheets of spider web, so we see these tiny little things stretching from the windowsill to the ceiling. That's all we see. But if you go to the Kruger Park, you can see mamish, a sheet of webbing. So that must have been what it looked like at the mouth of the cave. So I think it was General Avner who was with Shaul, and he saw this web at the mouth of the cave, and he said, nah, nobody's been here. Had they been here, they would have disturbed the web. So he didn't bother to go in and check. And Hashem said to David HaMelech, see, you need spiders? And spiders saved your life. So this is a life-saving instead of a life-threatening spider. But otherwise, there's no prohibition against killing a spider. However, I want to tell you a story, which I think I've shared with you in a Chassidish year. It's a general a life lesson. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the master storyteller and transmitter of Hasidic traditions and lore, he records that in the summer of 1895, he was 15 years old. He went with his father, the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Ber, for a walk. The Rebbe Rashab often took long walks for his health. And on these walks, he often took along his one and only son, the future Frierdiker Rebbe. And that is when he groomed him for the Rebbehood. He passed on traditions which were in the family all the way back to the Baal Shem Tov, and stories and teachings and discussions. He really was machanech him in those walks. In any case, one spring, it was Nissan, spring in that part of the world, so they went for a walk through a field, and it was the end of the growing season, so it was a field of wheat. And as they walked, they saw the zangin. How do you say zangin? The stalks of grain waving in the wind. So as they're walking, the Rebbe Rashab says, he called his son by name, and he said, Herr Yosef Yitzchok, listen, Yosef Yitzchok. Look at Hashgocha Protis. Every movement of every stalk, of every stalk of wheat was there in Hashem's primordial vision of Odom Kadmoin. If you're familiar with the term, good. If not, doesn't matter. Hashem's vision, which encompasses all of the generations of Earth's existence. Every movement was there, planned. So when you see these swaying in the wind, you're looking at Hashem's hashgocha. The Frierdiker Rebbe was very taken with his father's words and the seriousness with which he said them. So he was thinking, and they walked through the field and they entered a meadow. The meadow, with trees growing, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, still deep in thought, plucked a leaf from a tree, not a branch, a leaf, and he crumbled it between his fingers and scattered it to the wind. Without thinking what he's doing. He's just engrossed in thought, and unthinkingly he takes this leaf from the tree, crushes it, and scatters it. So the Rebbe Rashab then spoke up and said, do you see what the Mishnah means? The Mishnah in Baba Kama says, Odom muad la'olam. A person is always forewarned and responsible for his actions, whether he's asleep or awake. Awake means alert and conscious. Asleep means thoughtless, mindless. So a person is always forewarned, and he has to take responsibility for his actions, even mindless actions. So, for example, here we're talking about Hashgocha Protis, about how Hashem planned every creature and even the movements of those creatures. And while we're talking about it and you're thinking about it, you take a leaf, crush it, and scatter it. What makes your eye better than the eye of the leaf? Sure, you're human, and that's just a leaf. But anything that Hashem made is there for a purpose. So we don't just mindlessly destroy it. That is what the Frierdiker Rebbe records about his walk with the Rebbe Rashab how the Rebbe Rashab taught him to respect the life of a leaf. So back to your question, Tivya. Is it something to do to just kill a spider needlessly? No. If the spider is frightening children who don't know the difference between a harmless and a harmful spider, if it looks creepy even for adults, then you can kill it. But stam, you don't kill even an ant, stam. You don't have to avoid walking in a place on Wednesday. You don't have to avoid walking in a place because there's an ant there. I mean, there are people who do. The Jains they won't take a life of anything in any way. So they wouldn't walk where there might be an ant. But we Yidden don't have that prohibition. You can take a life for a purpose, and you don't have to avoid taking a life. You don't have to examine where you're walking in order to avoid taking a life. But stam, just to take a life, no, the Eibishter made that life, even if it's not animal life, even if it's plant life. Okay, I hope that satisfied your question. We don't have a whole mountain of Hilchos Shabbos questions piled up, so I assume everything went well on Pesach. No accidents occurred which raised any questions. Good learning with you all. Again, thank you, Raz, for your idea. Very nice. Hidden talent. And Tivya, if I can ask you to remain on for a minute after you finish the shir.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.